what I'm talking about tonight is the end of the story. So when we launched back in September, we have gone through the entire book of Genesis, from Genesis chapter 1 all the way through. And tonight is the end. Tonight we close the book of Genesis. We're closing out the story of Joseph, and we will be done. And we would have preached through the entire book of Genesis in this year. Now, it's taken us a very long time to get through the book of Genesis, but we have made it, and we're done, and we're going to finish off. In summertime, we're going to roll into the summer calendar, and we got some other things that are going to be happening. And then when we kick back off in September, we'll have a whole new adventure we're going to go on. But tonight, what I'm going to talk about is the rest of the story of Joseph. Now, since the beginning of literature, of movies, of anything like that, one of the top sellers, some of the top movies and books are all written about one topic, and that topic is simply revenge. I want you to think about that. Think about some of the movies that are out there, some of the books that are out there. It's all about revenge. And to be honest, if we could just be real, when we watch a story or we read a book or whatever it might be, we find a character that we identify with, something bad has happened to them, and then they have the opportunity to get revenge. I mean, think about it. Like when there's that opportunity for the revenge that happens, we get really pumped up. We're like, oh, yeah, they're going to get what's coming to them. Oh, they're going to get it. It's going to happen. And we have this whole thing about revenge that there's movies and there's books and there's all of these things. We love a good revenge story. And when someone innocent has something bad happen to them and they have the chance to do something bad to the bad guy that did something bad to them, they can, and so they do. And what we find ourselves doing, we find ourselves cheering for the character. We find ourselves being pumped up for the movie. And so we're like, yeah, this is the way it should be. This is the way it's going to go. If you didn't know this about me, I'm going to share this about you. I'm a little bit of a nerd. All right? Don't say yes. I heard that. Like, I like literature, meaning I like to read. I like old stories. I love novels. I love all that. And when I was a kid, we used to watch a show. Some of the older people in the room will remember. It was called Wishbone. Wishbone was about this little dog that would go through these adventure stories, and he would teach you. Quit laughing at me, Marcus. And he would teach you about books like Frankenstein, books like Oliver Twist. But there was one episode of Wishbone that as a kid, it caught me. And then I began to read the book. And some of you may have read this book in school. Some of you might have heard of it. But the book is called The Count of Monte Cristo. I don't know if you're familiar with the book or the movie, but tonight this is going to be a premise for us to kind of talk about. Because if you don't know about this, I want to share a little bit about this. Because this story is the ultimate story of revenge. This story is really the ultimate point of someone innocent that deals with an opportunity to take revenge. And so let me break down the story for you. If you could just give me your attention here, I'll read this. This is a story of an innocent man that is wrongly imprisoned, but has this brilliant strategy of revenge. See, you have a young sailor. His name is Edmond Dantes. He is an innocent, 18-year-old boy that is a sailor, and like any 18-year-old boy, he is in love with a beautiful woman named Mercedes. So in this story, you have Edmund and you have Mercedes, and they are absolutely in love. And let me just tell you, Edmund as a sailor, this dude is broke. This dude out, right? We're like, what 18-year-old has a ton of money? This dude is flat out broke, has no money, doesn't have anything, but he loves Mercedes, and Mercedes loves him. And they're like, you know what? We are going to be together forever. And they have this plan. And, there's the two of them that are in love, but then Edmund's got his best friend, Fernand. Fernand is his best friend, and the three of them, they hang out all the time. They do everything together. They grew up together, and even in war, Edmund and Fernand, they hung out together, and they went to war together. They were on the ships together, and they would always hang out. But the only problem is that Edmund and Mercedes had this beautiful love. They had this beautiful thing, and Fernand didn't. So as he begins to unravel this story, you find that he is actually extremely jealous of his best friend. How many of you have ever been jealous of your friends? Come on, you know what I'm talking about. A jealousy. I like that relationship. I like what they have. I like what they do. We get a little jealous. So in this story, this is what happens. Well, through this story, Fernand decides that he is going to set up his best friend. And not only does he set up his best friend, but all of the other sailors that sailed with Edmund get in on this plan and they set him up. And what ends up happening as they set him up, he ends up being framed as a traitor to his country for a crime he did not commit, but everyone said he did. So then what has happened is this young 18-year-old boy that's in love is ripped away from everything. He's ripped away from his father. He's ripped away from his family. He's ripped away from his love, Mercedes. And he's taken into this place called the Chateau d'If, which is like the worst of the worst prisons. It is a prison that is on an island that nobody can go to but by boat. And he gets dropped off there, and now he is in prison, and he is innocent, and he's got to live in this total confinement of nothing but a prison on an island. Why? Because someone was jealous of what he had. So you have this young man now who's in prison, and you can imagine how he feels. Listen, you can imagine the hate, you can imagine the anger, you can imagine all the stuff that is going on in his life. He is so angry at everything. And he was this guy that believed in God, but after all of this happened, this whole entire time he's in prison, he gets this deep anger and this deep rage, and he begins to give up on God, and he turns his back on God, and all of a sudden one day he is in his prison cell, and he's minding his own business, and he's been there for years and years and years. Then all of a sudden, the wall begins to move behind him, and this man breaks through. This older man who, he's like, what are you doing? See, what happened was there was this guy that was digging for 11 years. Thinking that he was digging the right way out of the prison, but all he was doing was digging into the other cells of the prison. And he shows up in his prison, and he's probably like, dude, I've not seen someone in a long time. It's just me. I've been in this thing. But what ends up happening is there is this man that dug his way through was a priest. Not only was he a priest, but he was an ex-soldier. And what ends up happening is he says, listen, if you help me dig the opposite way out of here so we can escape, I will give you something that is more valuable than you could ever have. I will give you an education. See, Edmund didn't know how to read. He didn't know how to write. He didn't know how to speak. He knew nothing about philosophy or science or business. But this priest said, I will give you the value of an education, and I will teach you history, science, philosophy, and all of these languages. I will turn you into a well-educated man, and more importantly, I will teach you how to fight as a soldier. So instantly you can think like, oh, he's all about that. He's all about that. So in this story, you have these two men then that begin this year-long, it's like years and years of just digging little inches by little inches each day to try to get out. Well, the story goes that they actually end up escaping the cell. Their bodies are thrown as if they were dead, are thrown into the ocean, and they're able to escape and swim to another island. But there is one thing that the priest did tell Edmund about. He told him about the riches and the gold that was in a place called Monte Cristo. Gave him a map. So what Edmund begins to do is Edmund goes out and he finds this island and he finds the money. He finds so much gold and so much riches and so much jewelry and so many diamonds that he cannot literally take it all back by himself. So he has to get ship after ship after ship to go and get all of the gold and take it. And then he dubs him and he calls himself, he gives himself the title as the Count of Monte Cristo. The wealthiest man in the world up to this point. He has all of the money. When he finally gets back home with all of this money and all of this wealth and all of this power, he learns that his father had died of a broken heart, believing that his son was a traitor. He finds out that his love, Mercedes, married his best friend because she truly believed too that he was a traitor. She did not know what had happened. He learns his best friend, the man that betrayed him, took over businesses and have become extremely wealthy and profited off of him going to prison. On learning of these events, Edmond Dante begins to manipulate events in an attempt to bring his enemies to justice because he wants them to suffer and taste the revenge and the hate that's in his heart. There's a movie that came out years ago that was out, and it was called The Count of Monte Cristo, and it tells the whole story, and it's a beautiful story. But what's interesting is when you read or you hear the story of The Count of Monte Cristo, it's very relatable to what we've been talking about in Genesis. Let me give you a rewind real quick. A boy named Joseph, youngest of all of his brothers and sisters, a young man. He's his father's favorite. He's daddy's boy, and he's the favorite out of all these brothers. Well, as he begins to grow older, the brothers absolutely hate him so much that they throw him into a pit and try to kill him. When they decide that they don't want to actually kill him, they sell him as a slave to Egyptians. They sell their younger brother. Then they go home and they lie to their father and say, oh no, he was attacked by a wild animal and he was killed. So here he is as a young boy that has no idea what's going on. All he knows is his brothers hate him. They sell him to Egypt. He gets to Egypt. He is sold into a man's house named Potiphar. Potiphar begins to take a liking to Joseph. Joseph begins to grow up as this phenomenal young man, this phenomenal young leader. Potiphar absolutely says, I will let Joseph, you can take care of anything. But the problem is that Potiphar's wife tried to sleep with Joseph. Joseph said, this isn't going to happen. She accused him of trying to sleep with her, which never happened. He never did. And then he is thrown in prison, and he is there for years and years, and then he is forgotten about. Then he has an opportunity to get out by interpreting the dream of these two men. But then these two men get out and they forget about him. So he's left in prison again. But then, as we talked about a couple of weeks ago, Joseph begins to say, you know what, God, I'm going to still serve you. I'm going to still love you. The Pharaoh has these dreams. And as these dreams come true, he says, I need someone to interpret these dreams for me. And he finds out that there's a man named Joseph in prison who can do this. He interprets the dreams, and the dreams basically mean that there are going to be 7 years of really good harvest in the fields of Egypt where food will be produced, but then there's going to be 7 years of extreme famine. So you have to be very careful. You got to make sure you stock up all of the food, have it all done, so that when the time of famine comes, we have what we need. This is where we pick up tonight in Genesis chapter 40. So Pharaoh said to Joseph, I hereby put you in charge of the whole land of Egypt. Then Pharaoh took his signet ring from his finger, put it on Joseph's finger, dressed him in robes of fine linen and a gold chain around his neck. He then had him ride his chariot as second in command, and people shouted before him, make a way, and he put him in charge of the whole land of Egypt. All of Joseph's life has drastically turned. Guys, remember, he went from the prison now to the palace. At one point, he was in a pit to die. Then he was in a prison. Now he is second in charge of Egypt. At this point, Egypt's one of the most dominant nations in the entire world, and he's second in charge of all of it. He has all of this authority. He has all these things. And if you remember when we first opened this, he had dreams that this was going to happen when he was little. He had dreams that he was going to be elevated to this position. But then it comes true. What happens? It says in verse 53, then the 7 years of abundance in Egypt came to an end, and the 7 years of famine began. Just as Joseph predicted it was going to happen, there's famine in other lands, but the whole land of Egypt had the food. And all of the world came to Egypt to buy grain from who? From Joseph, because the famine was so severe. So Jacob is now in charge of all of this food, in charge of distributing. Why? Because there's a famine and people need to eat. We don't know what a famine is. We've never been in a famine. We aren't sure what a famine is. But a famine literally means there is no food on the shelf. There's nothing at the grocery store. There's nothing around. We have no food. We have nothing. We're starving and we don't know what to do. So if we hear of somewhere that has food, we say, hey, we're going to go buy their food. But as this whole story has been unraveling the last couple of weeks, we've been talking about how Joseph has been in the pit, he's been in prison, now he's in the palace. But let's kind of diverge back to what's going on with Joseph's family. Because last we left off, Joseph's brothers lied to their father and said, no, your son died. He was eaten by a wild animal. So they lied to their dad about what had happened. Well, now in this story, what goes on is their family, now years later, are directly affected by the famine. They're directly affected by everything that is going on with this famine. And so what ends up having to happen, Joseph's dad, Jacob, says, listen, you guys got to go to Egypt. You guys got to go to this nation, which is about miles and miles and miles, hundreds of miles away, and you got to get some food for us. We need some food. We got to be able to eat. So basically now you have Jacob and all of his brothers and all of their families. They've been living this life out in Israel. And Joseph has been in Egypt, and they think he's dead. They don't even know what's happening to him. But now they got to go to Egypt to get the food. They got to go to Egypt so that they can survive. And so what ends up happening, Jacob's family begins to just get everyone around, and they were living on this reserve of food, and the reserve of food is gone. Now, Joseph was the governor of Egypt, and he sold all this. So at one point in this story, you have where Jacob's brothers show up in his throne room asking him for food. They come into the throne room, and you know what? They don't even recognize Joseph because it's been so long. It's been so many years that they believe that Joseph is dead. Because let's be honest, Joseph probably doesn't look like he's from Israel anymore. He probably dresses like an Egyptian. He probably looks like an Egyptian. He probably speaks like an Egyptian. So he doesn't really have anything in common with them. So they don't even recognize him. But they roll into the throne room, and he is there, and he sees them, and he notices them, but they don't notice him. Things can get a little awkward. You ever go somewhere and see someone you didn't want to see? Whoa, everybody's like, yes. You know, but there's a difference about going somewhere and seeing someone you don't want to see. But then there is a big difference when you have to go see someone you don't want to see, and you got to be stuck with them for a period of time. Like you got to go in a car with them, and you got to ride somewhere with someone you don't like. Or you got to go sit in a room, or you got to sit next to someone that you don't like. And you're in this room, and you're like, listen, I don't even like this person, and I got to be with them. And you got to be in that vicinity, and you don't like it. How strange is that feeling, that atmosphere in the room when you are with people that you might not, you just don't like them, you hate them. So now you're in a room, and there's awkwardness because of these people. Think about how awkward this is for Joseph. The very people that tried to kill him, the people that sold him like he was an animal, are now in front of him asking him for food for their family. They're in front of him saying, listen, we need you to provide for our family. And so you get this feeling that Joseph, in his emotions, in the realness of the situation, this is how Joseph responds. Check this out. Joseph knew who they were, in verse 8, but they didn't know who he was. Joseph, remembering the dreams he had, looks at his brothers and says, you're spies. You've come to look for our weak spots here in Egypt. And the one brother said, no, this is not. We've only come to buy food. We're all the sons of the same man. The brothers are saying, we're honest men. We never think of spying. He said, no, you are spies. You've come to look for our weak spots. Jump down to verse 13. They said, there are 12 of us. We're the sons of the same father in the country of Canaan. The youngest boy is with our father, and one is no more. Which they're talking about him when they're saying one is no more. But Joseph said, it's just as I said, you are spies. This is how I will test you. As Pharaoh lives, you're not going to leave this place until you bring your younger brother back to me. Send one of your brothers while the rest of you stay here in jail, and we'll see if you're telling the truth. As Pharaoh lives, I say that you are spies. And he threw them in jail for several days. He's got them. He's got them. I want you to understand this. This is like, for Joseph, this is the moment. He's been waiting on this moment. He's been waiting on that moment to say, I'm going to get them for what they did to me. I have this opportunity. He can, so he does. He throws them in jail because he had the opportunity to do it. He can do it, so he puts them there, and then he says, I'm going to test you guys. I'm going to test to see if they're still evil. I'm going to test to see if they're still jealous. Guys, I want you to look at me, and I want you to think about one moment for me. Think about a moment in your life Because we've all had these moments. Everybody look at me. I want you to think about this. I want you to think about the moment that you had in your life where you could get someone back for what they did to you. I want you to think about that for a minute. I want you to think about the moment when you were in the position to get back at the very people that might have hurt you. Let's bring it really. I want you to imagine that you're in position to bully the people that have bullied you. You're in the position to make fun and to tear down the people that hurt you. Oh, well, Pastor Micah, we don't do that. Well, no. What we do is we can post the picture, so we do. We can steal their friend because their friendships have fallen apart, so we do. We can date their ex now because they broke up and it was nasty, so we do. We can humiliate them the way they did us. We can, so we do. If I could just be real with you tonight, a lot of times this is what we do. When we have the opportunity to get the revenge, we can, and so we do. Oh, I can get them back. They hurt me, I can hurt them now. Their friends turned on them, well, they turned on me. I have the opportunity to get them back now. I have the opportunity to set them up. So we can and we plan on it. Can I tell you, there's an old saying that many of us have lived by, that many people believe, that success is the best revenge. We see it posted all the time. We see it posted. Oh, you have haters, be successful, and you beat them. Be successful, and you'll do this. Be successful, and you do that. And I see these things, and I understand these things, and we want to make more money. We want to be more influential. We want to have more followers, and we have all these things. You know what? To show them, I'm going to get more followers on Instagram than they do. To show them, I'm going to do this because they did that. To show them, I'm going to do this. And what we think by actions, we can overcome the feeling that is inside of us that hurts so bad because people have hurt us. So if we just accomplish this, then we can do it. We can make it happen. Can I just tell you the years and years that it takes to make more money, to become more influential, to have more followers, the result of all that, the result of trying to prove something is extremely exhausting. It's extremely exhausting. See, in the mindset, we spend years and years sprinting from one thing to the next, to get past the rejection and the hurt that we felt and say, you know what, I'm going to make this point of revenge to show them. Well, they say I couldn't do it. Well, I'm going to show them I can. When we feel wrong or hurted, we feel like retaliating because it makes us feel better. When we feel wrong or hurt, we feel like if I get revenge, it will fill that void of justice that I need in my life. We believe that we are entitled to hurt people the way they have hurt us. Listen to me, I want you to hear that again, everybody. We believe that we have the right to hurt people the way that they hurt us. And then we're given that golden opportunity. We're given that golden opportunity to do it. We can get the revenge. We can, so we do. We post the picture. We steal their friends. We humiliate them. We send the Snapchat video. We go and we try to date their ex, and we spread rumors and lies about them, and we do all of these things. Why? We can, so we do. We make it happen because we can do it. And we think, you know what? The revenge is going to be so sweet. The revenge is going to be so great. But can I tell you what revenge cultivates in you? Can I tell you what happens when you think that you're going to get them the way that they got you? You know what begins to happen inside of you? You become hateful. And you're never satisfied. You're never satisfied because you feel like the hurt that I had, they need to feel it. So I need to do whatever it takes to make them feel what is inside of me. And what begins to happen is you turn into someone who wasn't hateful into someone who is. You turn from someone that was lovely into someone that's not. You turn into someone that was sweet into someone that's mean. And you totally reverse. Why? Because you're driven by this opportunity that I'm going to get them back. I'm going to get them like they got me. Let me take you back to the story real quick of the Count of Monte Cristo. Because Edmond Dantes has all of the money and he manipulates the situation in everyone's lives, and he begins to unravel this plan of revenge that of all the people that have wronged him. In the story, revenge is the fuel that makes him go. He wasn't trapped in a prison anymore in a physical sense. He was just trapped in prison in a emotional sense, because his hatred, his anger, his revenge, his rage fueled him to say, I'm going to get everybody like they got me, and I'm going to hurt them. And through this whole story, what he begins to do is he begins to ruin this life and ruin that life and hurt this person and do this to that person and do this. And all of these people that we look at and say, yeah, get them, and we cheer him on, he begins to manipulate and hurt every single person that hurt him. But then at one point, it gets to the point where he encounters Mercedes again. He encounters his one true love again. And they get into a heated argument. And she begs him to stop. She begs him to, no, don't do this anymore. Don't get revenge. Stop hurting people. Stop doing this. Stop doing that. Because now what he was trying to do is he was trying to cause a division between Mercedes' son and everyone else that's in this whole story. And he's really trying to break this apart. And she says something to him that stuck with me and has always stuck with me. He says this. He looks at it, Mercedes, and he says, if you ever loved me, don't rob me of my hate, because it's all I have left. If you've ever loved me, don't rob me of this. My hate is all I have. And Mercedes responded to him, Edmund, let it go. I don't know what dark plan lies within you, nor do I know by what design we are asked to live apart. But God has offered us a new beginning. And in this story, everything begins to shift for the Count, and he changes his mind and he changes his heart through all these actions. And there's this whole climax that comes to this point where the whole story is shifted. See, in the story that we read about the Count of Monte Cristo, for the Count, it wasn't about just overcoming the situations and things in life, but it was overcoming the spirit of revenge and hatred that developed inside of him. Some of you need to understand this. Some of you, it's not about you overcoming the hurt or the pain or the situation that is in you, that hurt that causes you to, no, for some of you, it's overcoming that very feeling of hatred that's in your heart. Some of you, it's getting past that point and saying, you know what, I have to get past this hatred. I have to get past all of these things. And when I read this story, I realize that he had to overcome his spirit of revenge. And in the moment when it feels right to do it back to someone, are we willing to overcome the moment? Because teens, listen to me, everything we do in life comes down to the moment. Everything for us as Christians comes down to the moment. As Christians, we have this whole situation that comes down to the moment. And the moment is we can choose to do right or we can choose to do wrong. As Christians, it comes down to the moment. Do we follow after God or do we don't follow after God? It comes down to, do we do the right thing or we do the wrong thing? Guys, listen to me. When it gets down to the moment, it comes to the point of one thing. One thing. Is it the right thing or is it the wrong thing? When it gets down to the moment, it gets to a point. Guys, up here. We get to a point. Can we conquer the hate that we have created? See, that's the interesting thing about revenge. That's the interesting thing about getting back at people. See, revenge is the one thing that we cultivate in ourselves. Anger, hatred, it's the one thing that we allow to be cultivated and birthed. Because we make the decision to hate. We make the decision to get angry. No one else causes us to do that. See, people can do all of these things against you, and you can still choose not to allow yourself to become someone that's filled with hate and want to get revenge. But it's up to you. But see, then what happens is if you don't, then you have to do one of the hardest things that is possibly for us to do as humans, is you have to conquer yourself. You have to conquer yourself. And we can't do that without the help of Jesus. We can't do that without the Holy Spirit. We aren't able to conquer these things by ourselves. We need the power of Jesus. We need the power of the Spirit to say, help me conquer my hate. Help me conquer my fear. But hate and anger are things that we allow to be created out of us. We control how big the beast becomes because we feed it, and we feed it. See, revenge is this concept that I'm going to say this way. It's when we can, and so we do. But God has called us to live differently. See, what really matters is when you can, but you don't. If there's one thing I want you to understand tonight and get tonight, it's this. What really matters in situations in life when you deal with people, it's when you can, but you don't. It's when you can. I can make fun of them. I can get revenge. I can tear them apart. I can post that picture. I can slam them. I can take their girlfriend. I can do this. I can do that. I can do that. It's when you can, but you don't. You know, I look at the life of Jesus, especially when he was on the cross. There was so much that he could have done. He actually says to one of the guys, he says, do you not think that I can call down legions of angels to come down and protect me? Do you really not think that I could just open up heaven and all these things could come down and kill all of these people that are trying to crucify me? If Jesus had the right to do it, if anyone had the right to do it, it was Jesus. He could, but he didn't. And even when he died on the cross, he didn't hate the people that did it. So when the moment comes in our life to be able to get revenge, when you can, will you? Because there's one thing I've learned, revenge will do more damage to the one who tries to get it to do it than the one that's you're trying to navigate it towards. Revenge is going to mess you up more than it's going to mess up the person you're trying to get. The feelings, the emotions, the hurt, the pain, let me be real, the regret that comes with tearing people down, the regret that comes with making fun of that person when you shouldn't have, the regret that comes with, you know what, man, I really let my mouth go and I shouldn't have done that. See, revenge will do more damage to the one who tries to get it than the one that you're trying to get. And I just know that from personal experience in my own life. See, we read about Joseph. We have this story. He puts his brothers in prison. But he doesn't put them in prison out of revenge. He puts them in prison to test their hearts. Because the story's not done yet. It goes on to say this. Then the brothers went in person to him, threw themselves on the ground, and said, "We'll be your slaves." It's verses 18 and 20. Joseph replies to them and says this, "Do not be afraid. Do I act for God? Don't you see?" And guys, if there's one verse that you can get in your heart, that you can get in your spirit, it's this. Joseph says to his brothers, "Don't you see? You planned evil against me, but God used those same plans for my good." As you see all around you right now, life for many people, easy now. You have nothing to fear. I will take care of you and your children. He reassured them, speaking from his heart to theirs. But he says something very powerful. Don't you see what you planned in evil against me, God has turned for good. See, Joseph demonstrates his understanding of God's love by forgiving his brothers. Because do you know that forgiveness is one of the most godly traits that we can have as a Christian? Forgiveness. We've talked a lot about mercy and truth and patience and joy, but forgiveness is the sign of a Christian. I want you to, guys, listen to what I'm saying. Forgiveness is the sign of a Christian. Joseph doesn't seek revenge, but he seeks reconciliation. He says, I can, but I won't, because being reconciled to you will be better than the revenge that I can get against you. Because he's making things whole and complete is what God did for us. Because we were the sinners. We were the ones he died for. We're the ones that our sins were taken to the cross. And Jesus took those things on the cross. And when he says, listen, I forgive them. I forgive you for what you do. Forgiveness and what in his forgiveness to us is pure and it's holy. And when we forgive others, we are acting more like Jesus than we will ever know. Because I think about this, Joseph really follows the example of Jesus thousands of years before Jesus even shows up. Guys, after many bad situations, Joseph was finally in a place that he had seen so many years before in his dream. Remember, he dreamed of this. And his brothers made fun of him, and they ridiculed him, and they hated him for it. But the dreams came true. The dreams that he had of his brothers bowing down to him, of his family bowing down to him, it's happening. It's happening in this story. Joseph stayed faithful to God, and God stayed faithful to Joseph. And I wish I could just make it so simple for you to understand this, especially you guys that are walking through things. God is faithful to you to be there, to help you, to love you, to provide for you, to navigate you through situations. God is with you and faithful to you. All he asks is be faithful back to me. God just wants your faithfulness in response to his undying faithfulness to you. That's what he wants. Guys, being faithful to God isn't always easy, but it is always right. It's always right. And it'll always be the decision that you make. Trust me, if I could make it for every one of us, I would. I would. If I could be like, no, every one of them in the room is going to be faithful to God. Everyone in the room is going to love Jesus. Everyone in the room is going to love people. If I could make all of us like that, I would do it in a heartbeat, but I can't do it. Only you can. Only you can make these decisions to make things right and to do the right thing when it comes to God. So remember, in life, when you can, get back, when you can get that revenge, when you can, but you don't, God will honor that. God will honor that. When you have the opportunity to get back at people, when you have the opportunity to slam them, to hurt them, when you can but you don't, God honors that. See, it's interesting because we talk a lot about how we honor God, but God will honor you as well. God will honor you. What does that look like? Sometimes I know, sometimes I don't. Sometimes I don't know what that looks like. But what I do know is this. When you do what God has called you to do, you live in this free space where you're like, man, I don't got to hate nobody. I don't got to worry about anybody. I don't got to do anything. I don't have this hatred that's in my heart. I have this freedom that I can just love people. I don't have to hate. And guys, I'm just going to be real. This could be awkward. We're living in a culture of hate. We live in a culture that hates skin color. We live in a culture that hates when people have something that we don't. We live in a culture when the rich can have all this and we can't because we're poor. We hate when they make the team and we don't. When they can have the opportunity to go to college and my family can't do that. And we're not called to live that way. And as we continually progress, as you get older, I'd love to say it gets easier, but it gets harder. Because as you get older, you can have more excuses to hate people. You really can. I struggle with it all the time. All the time. But we do what's right because it's right. And so as we close out this series in Genesis, the best thing that I can tell you is that when you can, but you don't, you're more like Jesus than you know. So let's bow our heads and close our eyes for a minute, because tonight's response in prayer is a little bit different than what we're used to. It's just a little bit different. Because I'm going to ask you to do something that seems almost awkward to what I have said, but I want you to get the understanding of it. I want you right now with your heads bowed and eyes closed, nobody looking around, no one laughing, no one, I want you to think of those people in your life that you hate. Those people in your life that you hate. Those people in your life that if you were to say, when I can, I will. When I can, I will. When I get the revenge, when I can, I will. Who's the person? Who are the people? What do they look like? What's their name? That one person you think, man, if I could just get them back for everything that they did to me, all the hurt, all the pain, all the anger, all the nights of tears, all the nights of confusion, all the nights they've done this to me, if I could just get them back, who's the person that if you can, you would? You're dealing with this issue right now that you really hate someone. And you would like to get revenge. And you'd like to get them back. And you like to yell at them the way they yelled at you. And you'd like to disrespect them the way they disrespected you. And you would like to do everything they've done to you. You would like to do to them. If that's you tonight, I just want you to lift your hand and put it down. Man, that hand's all over this room. Hands all over this room. Takes me back to that quote that Edmund said, "Don't rob me of my hate. It's all I have left." But see, as Christians, we are called to the complete opposite of that. Is where it should be, man, you can't rob me of my love because that's all I got. And it's all I have to give. So tonight, if you're dealing with the hatred and revenge in your heart, and you've raised your hand, or maybe if you didn't, the first thing I want us to do is very simply is this, is say, God, help me let this go. Maybe you guys say that out loud. Say it with me. Say, God, help me let this go. And then where you're at, you just can follow after me in this prayer. Dear God, I need you to forgive me. The things that I have done, the things that I had planned, the things that I wanted to do, God, I pray that you will remove those things from me and you give me a heart to love how you've loved. Help me to understand that everyone has value. Help me to understand that it's not success that is the best revenge. It's not revenge that it's the best revenge, but it's the love of Jesus that is the best thing that I can give. So God, help me. Change me. Challenge me. God, help me when I get those responses to people that begin to just come at me. Help me to be quick in the moment to make the right decision. Help me to be quick in the moment to make the right choice. That I choose the love of Jesus over the hate of this world. So God, help me to just be closer to you. continue to forgive me for the things that I have done. And allow me to fall more in love with you than ever before. God, I pray tonight that you help us to forgive those that have hurt us, wronged us. God, help us to deal with that pain and just release it to you. Because, God, oftentimes the people that are hating us are hated. And hurt people hurt people. And so, God, help us just to be a beacon of peace and of love and of light to all of those that we encounter. Help us to get past saying, well, you bullied me, so I'm going to bully you. I'm going to hurt you. God, help us to say, no, I'm going to bless you. Changes our cursing to blessing, our anger to love, our frustration to compassion. And help us that when we can, but we don't, because you've called us to greater things. God, I thank you for these teens. I thank you for what you're doing in our lives. Continue to allow us to fall deeper in love with you. In Jesus' name, amen.